All right, today's video is going to be on Fight Club. We're going to decode it. Then that's going to roll into a couple of articles I got pulled up. And then we're going to observe Passover and read Exodus 12 and stuff like that. All right. All right, so we're going to get right into it. So the plot of Fight Club is about this gentleman who has insomnia. You can tell he's kind of a depressed fellow. And then he joins these groups with people like with ailments and sicknesses to try to make himself feel better when he doesn't have any sickness. Um, and then a young lady ends up doing the same thing that he's doing, and he notices her doing, going to these groups, and she doesn't have any sicknesses either, and so it's not helping him no more. And then he meets another gentleman, and they start this whole underground fight club, like this false form of enlightenment, so to speak. They kind of beat each other up to make themselves feel better about their lives. And then they they create a militia basically and like destroy the world. I guess that's where it leaves off. But I'm going to decode this movie and I'm going to show you the deeper um I guess the deeper meanings of this stuff. So I have a few clips pulled up. Nothing too fancy. They're not like the montages. Um, I'll go back to making the montage videos. Uh, they take forever. They take all day to do, and nobody ever watches them. So it's kind of a bummer. But I get a chance to get into all the deep elements of movies. And in this particular movie, I don't. I just talk about this is a very. Let me say this again. This is a very layered movie, right? Some movies are where they plug the white horse, the staircase, the bridge, the 19, the 911s, the 88s. They have to do that to make their movies made. It's all part of the subconscious programming that they have to do. That's the outcome of the enemy, right? They have to plug these things because they're trying to make them manifest through us by by our subconscious. And it seems to be working because most people are asleep and they don't notice this kind of stuff. And this movie has another dimension to it, meaning like there's a multiple layer to it. So of course, most movies, 9 out of 10 movies, or even I would say every movie has the original plugs. That's why you always find the white horse. That's why you always find the staircases. That's the reason why you always see the 88s and the 911s, because they have to do that kind of stuff to get their movie made. And then the movie has, it's the directors have their own agenda as well. So they get to plug in their movie and plug in their own meaning behind the movie. And we're going to decode. I'm not going to point out the traditional subliminal language, which we've done on this channel for the last year and a half. It's very easy to see. And basically, what that traditional programming means, it's just they're trying to plug in the whole Revelation 9 through 11. That's what they're trying to do. It's so it condition us for when these things do happen. So we do side with their antichrist. So we do take their drugs. So we do follow their agenda. So we do vote for him or for her. It's all pre-programmed in every single movie. Spoiler alert. But on this particular movie, as well as few out there, there's another layer to it. And we're going to study that layer. Okay. And I'll break it down as I go along these clips. Alrighty. All right, so we're going to start with the opening clip. I'm going to pause it every 10 seconds so I don't get a copyright. It seems to be working, so I'm going to keep on doing it. And sorry about the volume on these. For some reason, the volume just sucks, but the subtitles are on there. And of course, like I said, you have your traditional programming. Of course, you're going to see your numbers are going to reflect the same things. Of course, they got to throw in the 6 and the 6 months. They got to throw in all their. Um, we've studied the whole Starbucks symbolism and the maritime law that's attached to it, and then talking about a copy of a copy, which is a very light form of your Gemini programming. But that's not what we're focusing on. We're focusing on the traditional aspect of it, and we're gonna dissect a different layer, and you'll see. Okay, so right here you automatically get a sense of his melancholia, right? He's kind of like a depressed guy, clearly suffering from insomnia. And the first shot, they're already talking about, like, he's talking about how the corporations are going to name everything in deep space exploration. And that's attributed to capitalism and how these symptoms that he's suffering, these are the results of consumerism, right? And and when you leave yourself open to that, when we do become consumed by consumerism, we're a breeding ground for anything to enter us. Okay, we're a breeding ground for damnation. When we seek other things, or it's almost like a reflection, like a hollowness is a repercussion of capitalism. We see these symptoms throughout the world. And when he hangs out with all these sick people, it's almost like a direct reflection of consumerism. That's the result. That's what the director is trying to tell you in a silent way. And we'll get to that in a second. Okay? And that's the first clip. And see how there's a different layer to it? There's what they're trying to say to you, and then there's the programming layer to it. Again, we're not going to focus on the programming, which when I do the montages, I throw it all out there. All the layers and all the programming. I try to point out all the 6s and 911s and 88s and white horses and bridges, and I do all that stuff there. Don't have time for that right now. So, okay, so this is the groups, one of the groups that he attends, and you can see the American flag behind there. So the director's trying to tell us something here. And see, and only in America is where we have too much food, where people have sicknesses from it, where we take steroids for these shallow goals. Like it's complete Americanism. It's the result of capitalism. America is like a big science project, and we can see the results nowadays. Look at all the mental illness. Look at all the people sick. Look at all the people that are dying at young ages. It's just a direct result of consumerism. And of course, you have your traditional, your horse, and then your antichrist connection. They just have to plug it in there. There's no deep significance to this actual line. It's just I feel, and I've seen it over and over, that they have to plug these things to get their movies made. They have to program us. It's just part of the way. And you can see how the director directs back to the American flag, because these are all results, after effects of you know capitalism. And then you see him tap out right there. If you already watched the movie, you know that you know which I already explained it a second ago. But they create this underground fighting club, and they do that. They actually like tap out, and you can see the layers of directing here too. You can see that the main character is actually gathering his ideas from these groups that he's attending instead of, and this is a very emotional way of expressing the fight club, right? They're emotionally fighting, and the main character is not used to sharing his feelings like this, and he taps out, so to speak, and then you can just see the 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 inverse of the movie. I might say too, the movie is actually created very bipolarish. That half the movie is very slow, and the other half the movie is speeds up, and that's your which we've talked about in our in our movie decode tools for decoding movies videos, where it's the Gemini split, right? Where they split the mind and insert the serpent in the chest, or insert the demon, insert the possession. And you totally see that in this movie, that the movie's even created for possession. That's why it's very bipolar. And and even on a weird subconscious level, when you watch the movie, you're kind of in a weird spiritual way, you're being split, right? Because you don't realize that the movie's half slow and then half fast. And then you see that this movie is completely about demonic possession, because his friend that he helps join this, or helps create this fight club with, is actually his imaginary friend. And there's no other word for it besides, if you ask anybody, any Christian, well, what do you call that? That's possession at its fullest. And you can see all the elements for possession, as we talked about before on our movie Decodes, that there's always this Gemini split, right? This, either this two-faced character, or there's always some kind of like a serpent in the chest. So what they do is they split the mind and they insert the possession, just like in this movie, right? And then he's a breeding ground for possession, because he can't sleep, he's not happy, he's very depressed. All these things leave you susceptible for possession. And you can see him slowly going down this path, right? He's trying to find, trying to seek something more. And so he's attending these groups, and also in a weird way, he's becoming like an emotional vampire, right? He's feeding off these other people. And also, too, well, I'll get into it in a second. Hold on. And in the background, you hear this ominous church music, right? And then he's talking about freedom, and finding this false source of enlightenment, and this whole thing of letting go. And you hear them not even talk about God at all, right? So it's some kind of false enlightenment, especially when you hear the ominous church music in the background. They're almost like mocking it in a way, you know. All right. So next clip. Okay, again, so he starts attending these classes, and he starts you hear in these groups that he goes to, that he in a weird way feeds off of. um, you hear a lot of new age concepts intertwined, and that's what they utilize to heal in these groups. But in reality, they're implanting you with new ageism, right? And they're utilizing new age for enlightenment, on a subconscious level. But on another deeper level, Jack represents the Freemasons, because he talks about, he was this, and I'll show you in the upcoming clip, that he was this, he's like the warm little center that the world crowds around, right? It kind of reminds me of the March of the Penguins. But that's exactly what it is. Like how the world takes the hit, right? The world is sick, and this selected group of people, the rich, the high class, the elites, they're untouched. Well, all of us work our butts off every single day, and we take the hits, right? We take the hits of sickness and bad health because of working really hard and direct contact with consumerism. That, like the people in power, they are that warm little center, right? And in a weird way, they kind of like, watching our heartache, they kind of like feed off of it. And that's the main part of the subject that I want you to grasp, but that they are Freemasons, right? And I'll show you even this too, just to prove it to you, because this gentleman is his friend that they start the Fight Club with, and his name is Tyler. And you can see a Tyler is the name of the office of the outer guard of a Masonic lodge. Right? So a Tyler is like the gargoyle of a Masonic lodge. Guards the door. That's no coincidence. And then the Fight Club, right? All the people that join the Fight Club are the Masons. And we'll get more into that in a second. But back to the whole New Ageism. See how they intertwine it. But yet, nowhere in this movie do they connect healing or goodness or with God. There's one part of the movie where I guess, one actual part of the movie where they actually talk about God. And that's probably the most impactful part of the movie, and I'll show it to you. And it's nothing good for God. I see right there, he's talking about the March of the Penguins. And then, of course, more New Ageism. And then, if you look closely, back to the traditional programming, you do see a pyramid on her mug while she's talking about New Age, or using New Age methods for healing. And of course, his power animal is a penguin. All right. So now we see these New Age concepts weaved in this. Oh, sorry about the language. If you're sensitive towards language, Probably want to skip past this part, but this is for the sake of understanding. We're discerning this movie, so again, I apologize. But this clip is more later out through the movie where he figures out that Tyler, this guy that he started his underground fight club with, is really himself because he's hallucinating this because he doesn't get any sleep and he's not healthy. So he's producing this fictional character in his mind. And but what's really going on is that he's being completely possessed. And you can see him literally fight with himself, talk with himself, interacting with himself, and creating all this stuff. Really, it's actually himself that's creating it, not his imaginary friend. And it's like a very unholy version of the Holy Spirit, you know. Again, too, on another level, the three centralized characters are like Adam and Eve and the serpent, right? So you have Jack, the main character, Edward Norton being Adam, and then Marla being like a really warped version of Eve, jaded, and then Tyler. And Tyler hooks up with Marla the whole entire movie, and you don't realize that he's actually really she's really hooking up with Jack. But it's a really, it's there are some deeper things there. You just got to see it. But you'll see him fight with himself. And this also reminds me of the the Osiris ritual, right? How the presidents try to utilize that ritual every time for an inauguration. Um, they do a possession ritual, so they get they get the unholy spirit of Osiris in them. And they literally become a god on Earth. That's a whole nother story, but it kind of reminds me of that, you know. And if I'm leaving you in the dust about any of this stuff, just go ahead and leave a comment and I'll explain it to you. I talked about the whole Osiris ritual too and other decodes, but I don't know if everyone's up to speed. But then again, there's only 4 people that watch this, so I'm sure we're probably all on the right page, right? Okay, here we go. This is where he's starting to figure out that it's really himself. He's manifesting this individual, but in reality, we know it's possession. Again, and you know that Tyler's actually like the devil because he usually, and 9 out of the 10 clips that he's in, he's wearing red. And they let you know. And there's also a left brain, right brain thing going on too, right? Because left would be red would symbolize your left brain, and the same thing, the right hand path and the left hand path, right? The left hand path is the bad path, right? Just like using your brain. Right there he says all singing, all dancing. It kind of reminds me of the all seeing eye, right? Very Masonic like. Right here, you can see him fighting with himself. But in the movie, you see him fighting with Tyler. But at the very end, this is a forward clip that you actually really see him. He's really fighting with himself. He's possessed, like a possessed person. How many times have we seen this in the streets? Especially if you live in the city. I don't even live in the big city, and I see that every once in a while. All right, so this next clip, okay, it's probably one of the most important clips. So if you're a doubter in this movie, and you're just like, no way, this movie doesn't have those kind of layers to it, and you're just, you watch too many movies. Well, look at this, man. He blatantly brings up God, blatantly gives you a whole speech how they don't need God while he's receiving a mark on his hand. And all the people in this fight club, this underground militia, have a mark on their hands. So there's something way more going on than just a fight club, some underground people. This is a lot bigger. That's why it's figuratively the Masons. It gives it away, right? The mark, Tyler, operating underground, and then they have control of everything. And you'll see that later on. All right, let's check it out. I'm going to turn this up just a little bit. I don't on my main. See, that's already at 100. I don't know if this will make a difference turning it up here. Let's check it out. Again, they use lie to make the mark, right? And I made a video on this, I think, about a year ago from this particular clip about how we've all been lied to and how certain people out there are attributing the lie to possibly being the mark. Read between the lines, you know what I'm talking about. And it makes sense, right? Even though they're talking about the chemical lie, but it's definitely figurative and it's a metaphor. And you can see they're still bringing up his new age concepts to deal with his pains. It's kind of funny. Of course, monkey language. And then right here, he'll bring up God. Oops, sorry.
Fathers were models for God. If our fathers failed, what does that tell you about God?
Right here, when they bring up God, of course, very blasphemous, right? This is all about God. And then the mark. How clear can it get, or can it be? That's exactly what this whole movie's all about. And for someone to say, "Oh man, you watch too many movies, you're paranoid," how much more blatant can it be? How much more blatant can it be? While he's receiving a mark on his hand, wake up, man. I don't even need anything else besides that. That should be enough for you. Okay, so this next clip is going to be the Freemason aspect of it. You'll see them operating as a team, and they do you know, um, these acts of rebellion, I guess, and they destroy things for certain reasons. I guess the ultimate goal is to bring down the current world and usher in their new world, the one world system. It's allegory for all that. But you can see a direct connection between the Fight Club and the Masons, how they have so much pull and how they intimidate and persuade people. And I'm not talking about your regular lodge masons in your neighborhoods or in your towns. I'm talking about the hardcore Freemasons out there. The degrees, the people who believe that that Lucifer is Jesus and those kind.
You're going to call up your rigorous investigation. You're going to publicly state that there is no underground.
And you can see how they use intimidation as a means of an end.
Or these guys
Very
are
mob
taking
like.
calls. You're going to send one to the New York Times, one to the LA Times, Chris.
And you can see the Masonic checkerboard floor if you don't believe that they're Masons.
Please stop. Look, the people you are after are the people you depend on. Cook your meals. Haul your trash.
And see, he brings up like local type jobs, right? Regular ones. So the viewer will connect with it, right? I'm like, oh yeah, we're the Fight Club, but in reality, they're the people who own those businesses.
We connect your calls. We drive your ambulances. We guard you while you sleep. Do not fault us.
All right, great. So this last clip, I'm gonna go back into the traditional programming for a split second, and you will see it's important because they literally they bring down the present world in the end, and you can see the twin towers collapsing. And lo and behold, this movie came out, I believe, 2 years prior to the towers collapsing. Even though this city that they're in is not, I don't believe it's New York. I think it's Chicago. I'm not too sure. But you can totally tell that that's what they're trying to tell you there because the buildings look a lot like the Twin Towers. It's got to read between the lines. And it's those two buildings right in the front that look just like the Twin Towers. And then you have the one on the left that falls first.
A strange time in my life.
And the message behind this is the fact that that's what the Freemasons do. They do these random acts of rituals. A lot of people, they look like they're random at first, but really they're ritually programming us, putting us under a spell, pulling our strings. When we view these things, we don't understand what they are unless we have spiritual eyes to discern. That's why it's so important to get saved, because we're under its spell when we don't realize it's there. Same thing with watching these movies over and over and over. If you're not discerning this movie, you are perpetuating the spell of the movie. You just don't realize how powerful the Hollywood magic really is, and they're manifesting it through us. We're the hidden signal, like in the movie Independence Day. They're using our own satellites against us. They're using our own manifestation against us, right? And I don't mean to sound new age, but you know, for us to make something happen, you have to think about it. You have to subconsciously program yourself and put it to make big things happen on an individual level. Imagine on a mass scale. It should be illegal. The FBI should be all over this stuff. But nope, nobody says a thing. You know why? Because they're all behind it. That simple. They're manifesting through us. Why do you think they put certain symbols and certain messages on money? When you fold the money into a pentagon or a hexagram, it all your dollar bills, every single one of them, will relay a picture, an event that's happened or will happen. Just like the towers, they're on the 5, 10, and the 20. You fold them all the exact same way, and you see them in sync, in order, slowly crumbling the the bottom up. Meaning the 5 is like a quarter way collapse, the 10 is a halfway collapse, and then the 20 has, you know, the two buildings standing with the smokes. I don't know if that's 100% in order, but they are. They're all syncopated, and there's the 50 has the crack in the dam, the 100 has the flood going through. It looks like New York. Like, why do you think they do that? Because we put energy and emotion behind money. That's what people don't realize. There's energy and emotion, and by utilizing and capturing that emotion, they paint their little satanic pictures of their hopes and their what they want to happen, and we pump that energy into it unknowingly by touching the money, by counting on the money, by putting faith into our money. So much emotion goes into money sometimes, a lot of times, and it's sigil magic at its fullest. The same thing applies for movies. When we don't use spiritual eyes, we don't discern things. They're subconsciously programming us and subconsciously implanting us where it's going to play out, and we participate in that play out anyway. And so when I see events um, like the bridge collapse, right? We know that there's something deeper going on, right? In my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, it has the Freemasons crap written all over it. I mean, just look at the name of the bridge. We've talked about these names before. If you're a regular viewer in our tools for decoding movies videos, I put out like 5 editions last year, and I redid them and made them. I simplified them and put them all in one video, 2 videos, sorry. And you had the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse, right? And to me, it screams Freemason all over it. First of all, when we study movies and use discernment, the bridge always means it's a layered meaning. It means, from one time to another, getting from one side to another, correct? And that's allegory for connecting us to God, our connection to God. When they crash the bridges, it's usually they're letting you know that they're crashing the connection to God. We made that discovery, or we studied it on the Niagara Falls um, Bentley crash, the Rainbow Bridge. Remember, they crashed the Rainbow Bridge to God. And if anybody knows any kind of pagan, um, Greek mythology, I think even Norse mythology, they utilized the Rainbow Bridge, and that was your way to get to God. And it was allegory for that. It was them letting us know that they're crashing the bridge. How are they doing that? Well, we also discovered that the bridge is connected to DNA, the Golden Gate DNA assembly. You can look it up. And so you in movies in the occult world, they always crash the bridge because they always complement it with rearranging the DNA by figuratively talking about or plugging in their plugs for the, well, pun intended, implementing the shot, right? To simplify it. I've explained it plenty of times before, and if you're confused about it, I can explain it again. But I'm just trying to sum it up as easy as possible. So when I see the container ships, that reminds me of the Ark, right? And oh, hold on before I get to that. The bridge also means, like, from one place to another, or the bridge to God, or Lincoln, right? The Lincoln connection to the bridge, linking one time to another. Also changing time and space by whatever means necessary, whether it's DNA or whether it's an event. They can alter the time. Just like when 9/11 happened, it altered our timeline, right? It did, because the old world that we knew it, the free world, we had all of our rights. And then 9/11 happened, and then everything changed, right? Our rights changed. Now they have the right to spy on us and take away our privacy. And every time these big key events happen, it changes the timeline. The old world as we knew it is changed. Okay? So you have Scott, like Great Scott, right? You have your Back to the Future connection here. So that's your time and space connection. Also your toilet paper connection, if you remember. That has something to do with 19. And then you have your Francis, which is short for Frank. And we've all know the Frank means Frank the rabbit, and it's allegorical for secularism, which is very pagan and ultimately means the AC, right? These are things that we've talked about before. If you study the montages, I've broke these down, these names and these words, the montages and also the tools for decoding. That we broke these down where if you're confused, you shouldn't be confused. You know, simplified everything. They're actually even called tools for decoding simplified. So I simplified it for you. All right. So if you don't think that this has anything to do with, like, okay, so to me, in my mind, it reminds me of the Ark, and in a weird way, on an internal level, the Ark is the pineal gland, right? Because of its shape. Hold on, let me close this. And sorry, what happened here? Oh no, I lost it. What? I think I just accidentally erased it. Okay, so I did. I accidentally erased it. Let me see if I can pull it up on my tabs. Open tabs. Let's see. Anyway, I'll just word it to you. Okay, so what I had pulled up was the Evergreen. It was this picture. It was the Evergreen cargo ship that got stuck over there in the canals. And it reminded me, when I first saw this Evergreen um, cargo ship, it reminded me of a ritual. I'm like, what are they trying to portray to us? It was stuck in a canal, and it reminded me of the whole sodomite gateway ritual, right? How the pineals connected to the the sodomite area. And if you do any studying on that kind of stuff, that it's directly connected to your pineal from your rectum all the way up. And there's this sodomite ritual thing that the occult do to all the children and all that stuff. They think that it helps them in the long run through enlightenment. It triggers something inside there, and that's the reason why all these famous people and all these priests, they diddle a bunch of little kids, because it's connected to the sodomite gateway. And it reminded me of that. And when I pulled up the article on it, the Evergreen was directly under a bridge, perfectly under the bridge. And I was like, what are the odds of that? They're going to take a picture of that underneath the bridge. And then this one is underneath the bridge, but it destroyed it. So when they do these things, they mean something. And I pulled up all this stuff that the evergreen actually is a pine tree, right? Like in Back to the Future, you destroyed my pine because they're destroying it. And then if you ever watch Back to the Future, that it's very sodomistic. It's connected to the pineal gland, to the rectum, and there's some deep dives on all that stuff. How like Marty's a victim, and he's if you look at the cover, you see like the flaming tracks underneath his legs. You know, like he's been sodomized, and they that's how they change the uh, trajectory of an individual. They they change their time. They crash their current bridge and put them on a new course of trajectory. I know it sounds really confusing, but if you're a regular viewer of this channel, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or if you know anything along the lines, if you're confused, leave it in the comments. I'll do videos explaining that kind of stuff. And it kind of makes me uncomfortable explaining this stuff because it's out there, and unfortunately, it's real. But yes, pine trees are evergreens, and so you can see the pineal gland, just like in the movie Back to the Future. Remember, the two pines, the twin pines, became the single pine because they changed the timeline. And of course, you have your Gemini there with the two pines. All right, and I went even a little bit deeper and found out a pine is a cedar. Cedar means being strong and firmly rooted. And we know that the Bible always talks about the cedars. And it brought me to this article. Let me see where I'm at. Yeah, I know when I went into some dark places with the whole Back to the Future thing. That's why they call it Back to the Future. It's really But to the Future. There's some sick stuff in that movie, man, that people don't see. But if you have spiritual eyes, it's there, man. Just look at the cover. Study it. Doc is a strange guy. It's like this secret relationship they have. Kind of reminds me of Top Gun. All right, so in Isaiah 9:10, it says, "The bricks have fallen, but we will rebuild with hewn stones. The sycamore trees are cut down, but we will replace them with cedars." And people have done decodes and connecting this verse, Isaiah 9:10 and Isaiah 9:11, to 9:11, and how this exact thing has happened here in America, right? The sycamore trees that were over there, they were planted by 9/11, and then they were um, there were actual hewn stones used over there as well, and they've been uprooted and taken out and replaced by cedars, evergreens. All right, so keep that in mind. Oh, let me find it. All right, I know it's a lot of information. I'm sorry. Just bear with me. Okay, the cedar of Lebanon. In Ezekiel 32, 10, 17, God compared Egypt to a mighty cedar tree that he will tear down. Right? And we know that America has been compared to Egypt. Look at that eclipse that just happened. Where did it cross at? Middle Egypt. But that's for a whole nother story. And for people that, here's another thing I want to talk about briefly. Or, I don't know if I should. Anyway, okay, so in the Christian community, man, you see a lot of people just waiting, ready to attack other Christians for watching. We're supposed to be watching Matthew 24. Then on top of that, we're not supposed to be attacking each other. I see a lot of Christian channels out there. The moment that something didn't happen on a specific day, even though that's not the way eclipses work. Eclipses are a sign, they're an omen. Nothing ever happens on the day of an eclipse, but you can see things happening before you get earthquakes in diverse places. Today, Iran literally basically declared war on Israel. What are the odds of that? Iran. And of course, if America decides to come in and protect Israel, hopefully, right? Then of course Russia will jump in and protect Iraq. I mean Iran. I'm sorry. Anyway, but the whole point of all this, you can see the pieces slowly going into position. You can see the Bible talking about this, and you can see the fulfillment of this stuff playing it out. For us to dismiss stuff so quickly, let alone people are just watching, right? I'm not saying for those channels out there making rapture dates and all that stuff, alluding to a possibility of when, that's biblically sound. That's okay because we're supposed to watch. People are actually setting dates and all that stuff. That's not cool. But at the same time, he that is not against us is for us. Christ even said that. And then on top of that, we're supposed to be loving towards each other, and especially towards our enemies. You know, love each other, forgive your enemies. And I just don't get all the hatred out there. Like the moment something doesn't happen, our own brothers and sisters in Christ supposedly are attacking us. And then these are the same people with channels that just talk about people, about the enemy, right? About the occult nonstop, like overdo it. All their shows are about uh, um, Taylor Swift or those kind of people. I hate to even bring that name up, but anyway, you know, it's just it's very hypocritical where they're tearing apart Hollywood and or like our so-called enemies, these actors by name, and breaking down their lives and their text messages and stuff like that, talking about how it's not Christian. Well, show them how to be a Christian and be forgiving, because we're supposed to love our enemies. We lead by example. Anyways, um, I'm not pointing out OJ because I think a lot of these rituals are just ritualistic, or they could be even sacrificial. The point of this was that I seen it was missed. Okay, so when OJ passed away recently, right after the eclipse, another eclipse sign, I believe it was spiritually symbolic or symbolic. It's to remind you of the whole Apollo ritual. So that's exactly what this was. the white the whiter the rider on the white horse ritual. That's what the white bronco was, being chased by the coppers, right? Remember, he just cruised. So that represents the rider on the white horse. We've seen these rituals. We actually seen somebody, another police officer, on the freeway on a horse. It's the same ritual. And the coppers behind it is the copper serpent, right? The copper man, right? It's your antichrist bronze figure. It's like the Freemason or the Luciferian Christ. I'm not calling OJ that. I'm just saying OJ was just performing a symbolic act, just like a lot of these actors and actresses do. A lot of this stuff is ritual. A lot of this stuff is they're earning their degrees, they're earning their paychecks. They have to perform these rituals. They have to do it. That's why none of them really get put away. You see them out a couple of years later, and we don't even actually even see him in prison. I don't know anybody who knows OJ that went to prison. I don't know anybody who met Cosby in prison. I don't know anybody who met Epstein's and all them in prison. All these things are just fronts, and they're performing the rituals that they're supposed to perform. And that was to refresh the whole ritual again, right after the eclipse, because the eclipse was the ushering in, right? The birthing of the who, the AC, right? So that's all they were doing. Is he really dead? I don't know. Maybe they offed him for the ritual again to bring it up. I don't know. But I'm telling you, there's something to it, and we're missing it. And that little bit of doubt, that's you know who trying to tell you to go back to sleep. Remember, the world is a stage. All right. Let me see what else I have on that. Okay. So we're going to observe Passover. Okay. Exodus 12. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, it shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, and a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your account for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. Ye take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and ye shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month in the whole assembly of the congregation. If Israel shall kill it in the evening, and they shall take of the blood, strike it on the two side posts, and on the upper door post of the house, wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh, and that night roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs, and they shall eat it. And the lamb is allegory for Christ, right? And then Christ baptizes with fire. That's why you roast it with fire. Eat not of it raw nor sudden, at all with water, but roast with fire his head and his legs, and with the puritans thereof. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. Okay, and the Passover lamb is allegorically Jesus, right? We're saved by his blood, just like back then they were saved by the blood of the lamb, because Pharaoh did not let them go after all the pestilences, all the plagues, all the way up until the blood of the lamb came, and then putting the blood on the side posts, and that was the final straw that broke the camel's back, which Pharaoh let all the people go. And it's very allegorical for, or a foreshadowing of Christ and how we will be let go by the clutches of this world by his blood. Exodus 12:11, and thus shall ye eat it with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you and destroy you. I will smite the land of Egypt. And this is clearly the law, right? So the physical animal lamb was symbolic for Christ, but it represented the law at the time. And Christ represents grace. So we're no longer under the law, we're under grace, but we observe the feast days and participate if you choose. I try to participate the best I can. I try not to be a slave to it, even though that's probably not the best choice of words. But what I'm saying, I try not to beat myself up if I mess up participating, or if I can't get the day off. I try to stay in holy communion with God. For this particular feast day, I like to just, I, if I can get the days off, I can. If not, all week I stay in prayer. I stay in scripture, meaning like I'll read the whole story of Moses, Exodus throughout the week, and I won't eat any bread. I'll eat unleavened bread, the best I can. Um, and then I observe it and I study it, just like what we're doing right now. We're observing it. Um, Again, we're under grace, so Jesus fulfilled the law, but still we observe it. Same thing with the commandments. We don't do away with it. They're there. Jesus observed the commandments and the law. Okay, so this is the feast of unleavened bread. Exodus 12:14. And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. So leaven represents sin. So throw away all the sin. And then also bread, unleavened bread represents Christ. Bread of life, the manna that rained from heaven, the hidden manna, that all that stuff came from Jesus, or the story of Jesus. Um, part of the cedar plate is hiding the manna. They wrap it in a cloth, just like how Christ was wrapped in a cloth. They hide it, and then whoever finds it gets money, or gets a reward, just like us in life, right? When we look for Christ, when we find Christ, we get a reward, heaven, eternity with Jesus. Exodus 12:15. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread, even the first day ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the seventh day, that shall be cut off. I know I just read it, I'm reading it again for the fact that I lost my place. And I forgot to mention that you don't have to put away all the leaven at your house. We're not under the law, but if you want to be hardcore and practice this stuff to the fullest, by all means do it. Remember, we're under grace. So, okay, Exodus 12:16. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and in the seventh day there shall be an holy convocation to you. No matter work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by ordinance forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. 7 days there shall be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. Ye shall eat nothing leavened. In your habitation shall ye eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called for the elders of Israel, and said unto them, Draw out, take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, strike it the lintel, and the two side posts with blood that is in the basin, and none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. All right. Let's see if there's some of this. Yeah, that's pretty much it on the complete chapter is chapter 12, Exodus, but that's pretty much on the Passover lamb and then the unleavened bread. And if you can get the days off, the first and the seventh day, that's great. If you can do away with all your bread, that's even better. Um, Again, this is just observance, and this is the law, right? We are not under the law, because I know people make relative videos about videos like this and say we're not under the law, but we're observing the feast days. We are showing God that we observe His time feasts, His holidays, not secular holidays, not the pagan holidays, not the holidays of this world, the beast system holidays. Even by observing it, we are paying homage to God. You know, we do the best we can too. You know, don't beat yourself up if you can't observe this stuff the way you want, or you can't practice it the way you want. Observing is good enough, but if you can do more, do more. It is very bride and groomish, meaning like you want to show your lover that you're interested in her, right? You want to show that you're worthy of her. You want to show her that you listen to her. Um, you're willing to, to go into her world and trade, and that's what we're doing. We're loving the world. We're loving our God, and we're showing Him that we're worthy of being brides, and we love the traditions. All right, so this is a Passover meal. Let's see. Okay, so the plate that they make is called a cedar plate. I'll go over some of this stuff right here. When is the meal? The Passover meal known as a seder. Seder means order. In Hebrew, it's held after night has fallen on the eve of the 15th day of Nisan, and again on the following night in the diaspora. All right. Kosher for Passover. Like all meals served throughout Passover, the food at this dinner needs to be kosher for Passover. Raw kosher meat, fish, fruits, and vegetables are all okay. Grains, as well as rice and beans and legumes, according to the Ashkenazi custom. According to the Ashkenazi custom, are not okay. Processed foods need to bear kosher for Passover certification on the label. Okay. I try not to beat myself up on all the kosher stuff. I just say a prayer over all my food, anyways. It's kosher when it's blessed by Jesus. Um, the first couple of years, I actually did. I made sure I ate everything kosher, and it was just like, oh man, this stuff's tough. But again, if you're hardcore, go for it, man. All right, the traditional food list, the mitzvah or the matzah. The Bible mandates that we eat matzah, also spelled matzo, at the Passover meal, flatbread, made only flour, made of only flour and water, baked before it had a chance to rise, right? In a haste. Not all matzah is created equal, however, so make sure the matzah you buy is plain, not egg matzah or matzah with any coating, and that is marked kosher for Passover. The very best kind to use for your Passover Seder meal is the round handmade Shemura variety. All right, so I make my own flatbread. It's very similar to tortillas. So if you like tortillas, then you can go a whole week with flatbread. During the course of Passover dinner, every participant drinks 4 glasses of wine or grape juice. So make sure you get enough kosher wine or juice for everyone. I used to start out with wine. the kosher wine. I think it's Cedar. They make it. The brand is called Cedar. I'm not too sure. But I don't drink. Um, I haven't drinking in a long time, so I use grape juice now. Not against drinking or anything like that. It's just I believe everything in moderation. I just haven't had a desire. If you're curious, all right. The cedar plate. At the center of the cedar meal, we have a plate known in Hebrew as a ka'ara, which contains 6 ritual items. 3 matzahs are stacked one upon another. The zorah, a roasted piece of meat, often a chicken neck or shank. This is the only item not eaten. A hard boiled egg. So that's why on the pictures you always see the shank. It's just a bone. And all these things that are required, they all have a foreshadowing of Jesus' story. 2 portions of bitter herbs, typically romaine lettuce, checked for bugs, blah, blah, blah. Um, the charoset, sweet paste that is typically contains chopped apples, pears, nuts, and wine. Some include cinnamon, dates, and carpus, a vegetable such as parsley, carrots, onion, or a bit of cooked potato to be dipped in salt water. I have a friend that's hardcore and she does all this stuff, which is really cool. Um, I don't go this far out, but you can. Although not a cedar plate, you also you will also need a bowl of salt water, into which we dip the carpus vegetable, as well as wine glasses contained at least 3 ounces for every participant. All right. There's the candles, and there's always the candle lighting prayer. You can just Google Hebrew candle prayer, and it'll pop up. They're just quick little prayers that the main feast days always require candles, and you get used to saying those prayers over the candles. Again, we're just observing. Okay, candle setting the atmosphere. Like all Shabbat and Jewish holiday meals, the Passover meal is enjoyed in the light of candles, traditionally lit by the women. When Passover Eve follows Shabbat, the candles must be lit after night has fallen. Okay, the dinner meal. What is on the menu? We do not serve roasted meats. We typically do not serve dairy, since meat and dairy may not be mixed in Jewish tradition. The eating part comes late in the evening. The people have already imbibed 2 cup. I don't know if they spelled it right or if I'm just seeing it wrong. 2 cups of wine, as well as a good deal of matzah and bitter herbs. So they must be less hungry than you'd expect. Here are some tried and true traditional Ashkenazi favorites that many associates with this meal. Associates. Sorry. I'm like, what? Am I still at work? uh, I'm getting tired here. I'm doing this really late, so bear with me. My eyes are getting blurry, and I just got off work where I deal with all kinds of associates, and I try not to associate with too many associates. I'm just kidding. Um, Number one is traditional chicken soup, simple potato kugel, handmade gefilte fish, easy 4 ingredient briskets, toasted coconut macaroons. Okay, so you can look all this stuff up yourself as well. A lot of this stuff I don't practice. I just do the best I can being a Christian, being under grace. But it's really interesting stuff to know their tradition. Um, if you want me to go over more of this stuff, I can. Just leave it in the comments. Let's see. The unleavened bread. Let's see if we can get a recipe. A quick little recipe for you guys. If you're curious, it's very similar to tortillas. Um, I just make these throughout the week. They're good. I replace all my bread with this stuff. I mean, I don't do away with all my bread, but like my meals. So 2 cups of whole wheat flour, hard or white spelt, 3/4 cup cold water, 2 teaspoons of organic olive oil, 1 teaspoon of salt. And you cook it just like a tortilla. So you flatten it out and you put it on a skillet. You let it, uh, you know, 5-10 minutes on each side. You're done. It should look like this. Right there. It should look like that, just like almost like tortillas, and they're really good. They suffice. All right. Maybe we'll observe more Passover stuff later before Well, I guess Passover's right on the corner. It's the 22nd. Um, we'll see. Okay. And if you're not saved and you want to be saved, here are some salvation verses. Um, if you don't have the spiritual eyes and you think this stuff is crazy, try getting saved, right? God will bless you with discernment, and you'll have the spiritual eyes to see and discern um, the wickedness in the world and see all the beauty. You know. All right. Um, I'll read a couple of these. Salvation belongeth unto the Lord. Thy blessing is upon thy people. I'll read some randoms. Matthew 7:21. Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. John 6:4. No man can come to me except the Father which has sent me draw him. I will raise him up at the last day. Acts 2:36-41. Therefore, let all the house of Israel know assuredly that God hath made that same Jesus whom ye crucified, both Lord and Christ. Romans 6:14. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for you are not under the law, but under grace. Romans 10:9. That if you shall confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus, and shall believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. It's my favorite one. Titus 3:5. Not by works of righteousness which we have done, but according to his mercy he has saved us by the washing of regeneration and renewing of the Holy Ghost. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching.